Hi everybody, this is Dr. Julie Quinn, a Nova professor, and this video is going to talk about credentialing a source and double checking the quality of particular sources. We've got two websites on the screen at the moment, well, one website on the screen at the moment, and this is the media bias chart. And embedded in your class is going to be a module that reviews the All Sides website as well, that tries to help readers protect themselves from falling into traps of media bias and misinformation. And I want to show you how you can think about credentialing a source and making sure the sources that you use are trustworthy. So if you went into the internet and you wanted to look up inflation, for example, and you're just doing a general Google search, you'll notice that you've got some news organizations that pop up at the beginning. You've got some sort of definitional information. We've got .orgs, we've got Investopedia, and we've got .govs. And so in the Google search results, and by the way, how Google determines which websites show up at the top of the search is actually proprietary information. They don't tell us exactly the calculus that they put together to determine which sources appear first. But one of the things as a student in English 111 that you're going to want to think about is the quality of the research that you do. And of course, depending on the assignment, your professors may ask you to use the Nova Library databases. They may ask you to go onto a particular school, like a .edu website. They may ask you to do a variety of things to double check that you're getting the best sources for the information that you're looking for. And this video does not cover the library databases, but this video does cover when you do a general Google search. You're looking for news information usually. All right, so it's going to be important to sort of establish some ground rules on websites that you consider in your academic research in English 111. And so one of the first things you want to think about is, as you look at the URL, make some quick determinations on whether your professor is going to be happy with you using this website or not. I don't have every sort of extension listed here, but the popular ones for American students are .gov, .edu, .com, .org. There are other ones like .net, .tv, and popular British ones that are commercial websites, .co.uk, right? The first one, government document, tends to be, for the most part, I have to qualify that, very trustworthy. If you're looking at information in the Bureau of Labor Statistics or you're looking up data from the Department of Justice, you can use information that is .gov, whether it's state or federal, and your professor will probably be fairly happy with that selection. The information usually doesn't have an author's name. Often it is a document created by a collection of government officials. And so the institution itself would be your author. And .gov is fairly trustworthy, and you should feel pretty confident using it. .edu, this signifies an educational institution, so K-12 or higher ed. If it's a college that you're using information from, normally speaking, in English 111 and beyond, in the composition classes, the data that you gather from a .edu is often what we consider white papers or published conference content or department data. It may not always be an article in text, but for the most part, as long as it's higher ed, it should be fairly trustworthy. But sometimes content, even on .edus, is short and brief, and that may not be what your professor is looking for. So be careful about that. .com, this is a commercial website. The trustworthiness of a .com is in the air. It's sort of neutral at the moment. What you have to do is do a variety of other things to double check the credibility of the text in question. And that's where websites like the media bias chart and All Sides can be really helpful in the work that you're doing. OneNote.org, because a lot of students have mentioned to me when I teach 111 that, one of the first places they double check is that the URL has a .org. This means an organization, and I'm actually going to put organization in quotes. And the reason for that is that not all .orgs are created equally. I want to show you something from the New York Times, which is considered a trustworthy newspaper organization. If you took a look at the media bias chart, you could find the New York Times. It's going to be up here in the green space. It's right there. It does skew slightly liberal, But keep that in mind and look at the text that's highlighted in purple. Currently, .org is an open domain, so anyone is allowed to register a .org, and there are more than 10 million of them registered worldwide. This was published just 2 years ago. That is recent data, and that is something to consider. Anyone can have a .org. Up until fairly recently, I knew of a popular hate group that had a .org, and they had a landing page that try to sort of trick people and make them think that it wasn't this hate organization. And click here for the truth on Dr. Martin Luther King and things like that. And then you click and then you get the hate speech. So .orgs are a lot like .coms in that you don't always know whether the source is going to be trustworthy or not. But if you look at newspapers, they're .coms. And so what you have to do is you have to double check the quality of a source. And there's a couple of ways that you can do that when you're using .coms and .orgs. The first place you can go is you can go to the media bias chart, and I'll put the link below the video. It's adfontismedia.com. This was created in partnership, I believe, with Colorado State University. And there's a static media bias chart of news organizations that are predominantly Western news organizations. And then you can also use an interactive media bias chart. So for example, if you wanted to do a quick search for, let's say, USA Today, and you just want to see where it sort of falls into the spaces on the web that have been evaluated by expert researchers, you can see that it's in the green space. The key over here on the right says the green space is most reliable for news. The yellow one is high in analysis and opinion. You can see the bigger yellow here, and there is some overlap. Orange is some reliability issues and or extremism. And then red, you want to really, really stay away from. So remember, just because an organization says that they're a news organization, they're probably listed as a .com, but that doesn't automatically mean that they're trustworthy. The things that you can do to credential a source and to determine source trustworthiness is double check the background of the author, right? Or authors or group, because not always, a text isn't always written by a person, but maybe it's representative of an organization like the World Wildlife Fund. So if you find that there's a particular author named of a text, what you can do is take their name, and it's easier if it's an uncommon name, if the name is something like John Smith, and then one of their article names, and then search them in Google, look them up on LinkedIn, look up if they have a bio. If the person is famous for the research in their field, they may actually even have a Wikipedia entry. So check out the background of the author and the group. You can do that by doing a Google search. You can also do that by doing a library search. This is really good and important if the person is known to publish peer-reviewed academic journal content. And remember, this video just focuses on web research. But what you doubly want to make sure of is that you've covered all of your bases and you're using the most trustworthy content. One of the things that you want to think about is tone of the text, right? You want to make sure that the author's not using incendiary language. They're not writing in all caps. They're not writing with a lot of exclamation points. And even the word choice that an author uses. So we'll say format and word choice, if I can spell correctly, can help determine tone. Do they call somebody a terrorist? Do they call them a freedom fighter? Looking at the words that they use, looking at does the source that you're considering for part of your research, do they have information that is documented? So do they have data? And if so, do they name where they get their data? And is that data linked, for example? If they said they got the data from the Centers for Disease Control, then they have a link, and you take that link and it takes you to the Centers for Disease Control. You're probably in much better shape. So that's something to think about. Another way to sort of determine just web page and or source, we'll say source and site trustworthiness, is the quality of the website design. So I'm going to take you to the Palmer Report. This is considered sort of a hyper-liberal news organization, and I want to show you sort of the lack of quality on this website. If we compare this to the New York Times, if you look at the New York Times and we just go to the front page, you can see the New York Times has data from the recent election. It's got all of these different articles organized well. You can actually click on any particular article and hyperlink to the author's name and sort of a quick bio of them. The Palmer Report is has a much weaker design. There's not a lot of information here. The menu is sort of under, you click on it, but if you click on, you can see that there's a lot of white space. There are a lot of images being used. The images, even it's not text, but the images can seem to be incendiary too. We've got Fox News upside down. And when you click on a particular text, the font is gigantic. I don't know. The reason maybe is to, it's like when students write academic papers and they write it in 16-point font, like to stretch a page. It's to make it seem like there's more content than there is. But the first thing you see on the Palmer Report website is donations. That doesn't really give us the information from the article. The information from the article, that's it. It's just 4 short paragraphs without, it's an opinion. There is one link, but there's just talking directly to the audience. News reports generally write in third person, talking about the self, the lack of in-depth data. This is a really sort of weak article. And of course you can see that there's a lot of commentary below, but this would be a bad website because the design, looks cheap. It doesn't mean that the text is bad, but it's a signal that you should really sort of sink your teeth into the text to make sure that and who's Bokeh Blue? Here's how you determine. I'm going to go to Google and look up Bokeh Blue. Okay, Bokeh Blue has a Facebook page and Palmer Report. We could go to Addie Bokeh Blue. Let's take a look and see what we find here. That may not even be the same person. And of course, it's just this article. There doesn't seem to be a quick list of information on the web of a particular source. Now, when you're looking up news information, I want to show you the difference between somebody that it looks like they're writing under a pseudonym. We can't quickly find information about them. And a journalist who actually has more of like a footprint on the web. Christiane Amanpour is an international anchor for the CNN international nightly news program of her name. You can see information about her actual reporting and videos. You can see her landing page on the CNN website, where you can see the articles that she's done or the interviews that she has hosted. And they even have all of her podcast information, show transcripts, and so on and so forth. There's much more information that we can find about this author, and that does tend to make professors feel like a source like Amanpour is a little bit more trustworthy than Bokeh Blue. Just remember, not all sources have people named. Often groups are author. Let's take a look at one organization, the World Wildlife Fund. You can go to About Us and you can find out their mission and values and who we are. Usually trustworthy.orgs will list information like experts, the financial information, their particular newsroom. Often smaller organizations than the World Wildlife Fund will have like boards of directors and so on and so forth. So just remember, in the end, what's important about source and site trustworthiness is the quality of the author, the tone of the text, listing where the data came from, the quality of the website design, but not popularity of the author, website hits, whether they are on social media. Doesn't really determine quality. And you have to sort of be really thoughtful about the research you do, especially when you're doing web research for writing in English 111. I hope that this introduction to credentialing a source and determining source trustworthiness leads you to use websites like All Sides that will be used in this class, and you can compare articles on particular topics altogether, and in that way you become much more comfortable with media research in the future.